You're listening to the Marginally Geeky Show, the epically geeky book club.
Sorry, I cut you off there. Greetings and welcome to the Marginally Geeky Show. I'm your host for the evening, Eugene Stevens. Tonight I'm joined by Shaun, Joseph, Chris, and Ray. How's everyone doing?
It's the weekend, man. Having a good mood.
Oh, yeah. Normally we record on Wednesday night, but Wednesday was not a good night for a lot of people on this show. So we had to schedule for Friday. So we're all a little loose and having fun tonight. So we're also kind of excited because we're reviewing a Bob book, and that always puts us in a good mood. This is your first Bob book with us, right, Joseph?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Because, yeah, the other four had come out before I even joined the show.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So let's start off. Whose pick was this? Was this Shaun's? Okay. It was basically came down to who gets to pick the book. Is what it boiled down to. And of course, when it came out, it did just come out here in September. We're recording in October. So it's only been out a little over a month. So we're getting to it pretty quick. That being said, I'll ask, we already know the answer. Shaun, why did you pick this book?
It's the Bobiverse. How could you not pick it? I got lucky that it came up on my my month pretty much. So, but this is one of the few series that's my comfort food that I can just re-listen over and over and over again. So yeah, fifth book in the series. I think it's going to be a little while before we see any others. Dennis has quite a few other books in the works right now before he'll probably get back to this series, but which is fine. All this stuff is golden. So
yeah. Oh yeah.
It hurts me to think, man, it may be a while for getting another Bobiverse book, but if you told me we're getting another Outland book, I'd be like, nope, good to go. So
there's, I think, 2 more Outland books and Roadkill. I think another one's coming. And what was the other one?
The alien.
Yeah, it's when he got turned into like metal. Pardon?
The invisible alien one.
The title of it.
The guy run over the invisible alien. Isn't that how it starts off?
No, that's Roadkill.
Yeah, that's Roadkill.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's another series. Miner basically gets some goop on his hand and gets turned into metal. And
so we're getting another one of those.
Oh, that one. Oh, okay.
That
I remember that one. Yeah.
I really enjoyed that one. I enjoyed it so much I can't remember the fucking title. But
you know what we should do? We should have Dennis back on and
just
ask him
gush
about
at him. Just
I would
over him.
love to do that. I really want to get some of the narrators too, like Ray Porter, R.C. Bray.
Yeah,
that'd be awesome.
Oh my god.
So I've already proposed that we get together at some point and plan out one of the other shows, the Epically Geeky Show, for maybe the year, at least to kind of sketch out some ideas for what we want to do for episodes, because it helps. It does help to kind of plan stuff out like that. I didn't think we would need to do it for this show because basically every 6 months we kind of go through and pick. And I don't know, maybe we need to have a conversation of, do we want to step away from picking books and maybe try to get some more authors and readers on? I would be okay either way, but we can have that conversation offline. Yeah. So anyway,
sounds good.
Yeah, because we're here to talk about Bobiverse. I guess I'll start with the synopsis and then we'll go around real quick. So let me see here. The Bobiverse is a different place in the aftermath of the Starfleet War, and the days of Bobs gathering in one happy moot are far behind. There's anti-Bob sentiment on multiple planets, the Skippies playing with an AI time bomb, and multiple Bobs just wanting to get away from it all. But it all pales when compared what Icarus and Daedalus discover on their 26,000-year journey to the center of the galaxy. Sure, it could have settled the Fermi paradox for good, and what Bob doesn't want to solve a mystery of the universe. But it also reveals a threat to the galaxy greater than anything the Bobs could have imagined. Just another day in the Bobiverse. We'll start with you, Shaun. Initial thoughts.
So in preparation for the 5th book, I ended up like speed going through the entire series again, which I'm glad I did. Especially the 4th book. Now, the 4th book was always kind of the weakest for me. It had some really cool concepts in it, but it just didn't feel like the first 3 felt like a trilogy, and then the 4th one felt tacked on. But I found this book, it kind of recaptured some of that initial feelings I had with the first 3, which was really nice. The storylines were excellent, but you could probably have done like just an entire storyline on Ick and Day on theirs. Also, like the AI, they probably could have just done a storyline like it. As much as I enjoyed this book, there was a lot going on, and sometimes switching stories between different storylines, it ruined the continuity a little bit.
Okay.
Which it's minor. I found it was with that first trilogy and even the 4th book, it was fairly easy to follow along the different storylines because they weren't too huge, but they all kind of blended and all that. Where this one, the storylines were all like pretty massive events going on, but they weren't connected to each other than like one Bob popping up to have a conversation with another one kind of thing. That was like the only connection. And that seemed a little forced, which I get it's going to happen. Like when you start from 1 and then start going up exponentially in characters. Yeah. It was a really ambitious book. And that was basically my only quip with it, but I loved it. I'll listen to it again and again and again.
Fair enough. Chris, initial thoughts?
Yeah, I'm with Shaun. I enjoyed it. It did feel like a lot was going on. Like I couldn't quite attach myself fully to a storyline because it kept, once I got into it, then the chapter would end and it would go jump to something else. And then my squirrel brain was like, oh yeah, that's where they are. This is sort of in the timeline where they are. But yeah, after like, this is the 5th book. So after a while, like how, I don't know if he's got like an end point that he wants to get to, and he's trying to get there, maneuvering the stories to get to where it needs to end. But yeah, I'll listen to, I don't know if I'll listen to it again, but like, I'll happily read whatever comes after. And I want a Howard and Bridget story.
Well, you got it. You got one
in this one.
No, I want just them. And
Oh, just them? Okay. Fair enough.
Just them, only them.
Well, just them. There's a lot going on there, but anyway.
I know. I love, and the dragons. It was really cool how Dennis comes up with this kind of stuff. And again, the science crap was, like, I didn't get it. I appreciate that it sounds very much like he knows what he's talking about. But yeah, I really like when they find a new species and how he comes up with all of that. It's like, it's really cool. Yeah.
Ray, initial thoughts?
So I remember I was a little concerned about like getting into it again, like not sure where the story was going to go. Picked up right where I was okay, I'm in. But there was a moment that I became concerned, and that was when they started talking about Homer again. And I'm like, oh no, where are we going with the story? Thankfully, I was okay with where it went, but I did get that bit of a, oh, fuck, are we going there? So yeah, that was, I'm glad we didn't see that. Like I think it would be harder if we, heard about him actually coming back and stuff like that. So, so anyway, that being said, it made some sense as to why the Bob split. I appreciated the kind of the context there, and then overall, like, yeah, some people said, "Oh, this feels like filler." I'm like, no, this is a continuation of the story, so I enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe when we get to the end of the series, these middle ones, however many there are, might feel like filler, but right now it's.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. Joseph, this is your initial impressions on this show for the Bobiverse.
Yeah, so I kind of equated books 1 through 3, kind of like starting with Iron Man and ending with Endgame. Like it was a very concise.
Yes,
this is this story. Book 4 I enjoyed, but I feel like it was very much everything that Marvel had thrown out up until recently, where it was like, here's a story from the expanded universe that still kind of impacts what's going on, but it's just an expansion to what's going to the universe, so you can be aware that there are other things going on outside of this thing. And I feel like this is more bringing us back to, now we have major plot points again, so it would be like, I think, what is it going to be, Fantastic Four that in Marvel that's going to introduce the next big bad kind of thing. So that's how I kind of approached these, where Heaven's River was great, but it was just a story that just pull it out of the series and go straight to this, and you're okay. You may the Starfleet War may kind of you catch up on that part, and then you can go on with what's rest of it. But I really enjoyed it. I am excited where he's going. I have this weird kind of, anything that ever talks about what's at the center of our galaxy always will intrigue me, so that was enough of a hook. I mean, I like the whole series in general, but I'm excited to see because now I feel like we have 3 like major storylines that we can like put a stake in the ground. Like this is it for the rest of the Bobiverse. This is where it's going to go. Not just we'll see. We'll throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks.
Fair enough. I loved it. I unapologetically loved it. I was nervous starting it just because it does set up a lot of big stuff. And unlike some of the other book series, I don't feel like he would kill any of our major characters, but that has happened. That is one of the things I love about these books is I feel like for the majority of the Bobs we're probably safe, but there are cases I'm just like, okay, they're going into a new area. Like, could Medeiros raise his head again? Like, could one of them get knocked out? And I could totally see him as a way, in a future book, killing Bob or Bill or someone, and then they come back and they're like, well, damn it, I lost like 4 hours. It wouldn't be a big thing, but it's still like, you still killed a major character. Yeah. It was a safe kill, but still. So I'm always a little leery with, all right, where are we going? This set up a bunch of huge stuff. There are definitely some strings that get tied up. There are definitely some strings that just kind of hang out there. To me, this feels like right now, book 4, Heaven's River, feels more like a filler book. And I think it will depend on what the next book or 2 end up doing. If we get another trilogy out of this, if we end up getting what happens here, another book, and then to wrap that one up, so we basically get a trilogy, then I think Heaven's River would clearly be kind of a filler to go between the 2 trilogies, which I'm fine with. As long as we keep getting stuff, I'm okay with side quests. Like, that's perfectly fine. But yeah, it wrapped up so much stuff and it opened up so many other things. I disagree with you, Shaun, in that I do feel like a lot of the times it did feel like there were a lot of stuff going on and it wasn't converged. I do think he kind of wrapped it up for the most part near the end there. And kind of converged everything together. But just unapologetically, I am a Bob. Like I can't. Joseph, I said this before. I'm a freaking Bob. First off, my first name is Robert, so I'm a proper Bob. I spent the majority of my time years ago doing nothing but dealing with printers and printer schedules. So I get super in depth and super focused on stuff and go down rabbit holes constantly. Like, I'm a Bob. So these characters, as different as they are, and I love the fact that they just continuously keep evolving into kind of their own people. I love the idea that you could split yourself personality wise, and over enough time, it would be like having a group of friends, kind of like y'all. Like it feels like I'm visiting with a group of friends, and like when they get together and talk about stuff, I'm just like, yes, that's first off. Yes, they do stupid things from time to time, but everyone does. But for the majority of the time, they're like, no, we need to work this out and figure out what's going on. And the majority of the characters are smart characters. They do stupid things from time to time, but they're smart characters. And you're just like, okay, yeah, I probably would have been stupid and go on. Because they even, chide each other all the time. Like, why don't we go do this? Why? Especially like Day and Ick. Day and Ick are just like, I thought you were the bad influence. No, you are. It's that type of thing. But anyway, all right. So let's get into it. I did not go through. I've been going through and talking about the characters. We're not going to do that because going through it one at a time with characters doesn't really make sense. We're going to go back to an older format, and we're not going to go by every single thing, but I do want to bring it up kind of by points so we can talk about some of the stuff real quick before we get started. If you have any questions about how good this book is, it is a 4.8 out of 6,758 reviews. That is insane. Any author will tell you once you get up to about 100 reviews, that's when it starts getting out to enough people that it's starting to get a little, a little mass. And if it can stay above a 4 on something, you've got a hit. And the fact that this is almost a 5 is insane. All right. So let's just start off. We start off with Day and Ick. The last time we really heard from them, it was after the Others War, and they decided they were going to go see what was at the center of the universe. And so we pick up, they're heading to Galactic Center. And while they're there, they start finding interesting stuff and start slowing down and find wormholes. And so they start going to explore wormholes. Thoughts on how they went about doing that? Because I'll be honest with you, like when I'm playing a video game and it's like a dungeon or something, I have especially older games, I always start with the left path and explore as far as I can there, and then come back and keep exploring that way. And I very much kind of got that out of, well, let's see where this goes. Well, dang it, now there's more. Let's just see what this one goes. And just kept going and exploring. Thoughts on that?
I like their idea. Like they didn't go out to explore, they went out to map it. So They spent very little time looking at what was there. It was like, go through this one. Oh, where are we? And where are the next set of wormholes? And because they got in an argument about wanting to stick around and like actually exploring. And they're like, we could be here for centuries. No, we have to. Let's map it, send the map back. And then they argued about duplicating themselves, which I'm kind of surprised they didn't do. Because
but there's a bootstrap there too, right? And that's the one thing about this that they always get right is where's the what the hell is it called? Where everything
bottleneck. Where's the bottleneck?
Where's the bottleneck? Because there's always a bottleneck somewhere.
Yeah. And I love the fact, because they even brought up the fact, he's like, we even brought up the fact, they're like, we didn't even bother making mayonnaise. Like, it took them a while to even get to the point where they could build a mayonnaise so they could, when they did finally go back and start doing a little bit of exploring, they were like, well, we can just kind of do the basic stuff. Maybe we should have done that. Yeah, well, we wouldn't be out here at this point anyway. It's like, and they even say this, it's like we're an old married couple arguing over this stuff. And that's exactly how it would come down, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So, the next thing that comes up is Bob talking with Anik about the Quiniverse. So now we have a new universe, essentially. And I'm going to kind of skip around here. So let me see here. So basically, Anik wants to create a Quiniverse. So we have an afterlife universe like the Bobiverse, but for the Quinlans. And the first one who enters it is Teresa. She ends up passing away. Who Bob has become very close with, and especially near the end of the book when they're flat out just like, is what's going on there, and he's just like, there's nothing going on. I don't know. Like, I don't know. I'm stupid about this. Yet another reason I feel like I'm a Bob. So, but anyway, so we get a Quinlan Quiniverse set up, and Teresa comes in and she starts getting used to everything, and then she even starts coming out and popping out to the moots and everything in the normal verse. She has a human version as well, and Bob has both as well. But one of the things that they run into is after they start getting more and more people or more and more Quins into this universe, some of them are shutting off. They're switching themselves off. And he's like, yeah, we've done some research, and apparently that's happening in the Bobiverse as well. Thoughts on that? Because we've had conversations. It's kind of interesting since this is your first one on this, Joseph. We've kind of covered some of this stuff. So you know what? Actually, let me go back real quick and let me ask you this question. Especially because you're not really a practicing Catholic, right? Yeah. But being raised Catholic, because that was one of the things that was brought up. If you were given the opportunity to join the Bobiverse, would you?
Without hesitation. That's
right here. I think everyone here said the same thing. So, yeah. Thoughts on why? I'd like to know why.
It's that old saying that you see on social media every once in a while. I was born too late to explore the world and too early to explore the universe. So it's the timing of it all. There's so much out there that I would want to see and experience that, my, time here would not cover, unless, aliens came down tomorrow, gave us all the advancements in technology, and then we can just go wherever we wanted. Then sure, put me down whenever I'm supposed to go down.
Yeah. I think we all said the same thing. My thing is just like, and we've had this conversation on the Creative Show, like, things are going to change here in about a decade whenever I end up hopefully retiring. But like, I just don't feel like I will have enough time in my lifetime just to do the things that I want to do. Just, and Teresa even brings that up in the thing when he's like, yeah, there are people shutting off. She's like, well, why? And she said, because apparently they feel like there's nothing to do. And she's like, but there's all these books to read and she didn't say movies and TV shows because they didn't have that in the Quiniverse, but she's like, there are all these books to read and all these things to explore. And that's exactly how I feel like just the amount of TV shows and movies and music and books, just that alone, let alone the stuff to do and make and explore. I'm just like, yeah, I want more time.
I think that it would only work for people that are naturally inquisitive, because you could say, I want to read every book and every movie and blah, blah, blah. But if you don't have anything else outside of that, I could see someone getting really bored really fast and just be like, why am I even here?
Right. And no, I totally get that. I get that it's definitely going to be a personality thing. So if you were going to continue on, like, I think everyone here would make a decent vampire. But if you were turned into a vampire, like if all there is to do is feed, like I'd be like, nah, I'm out. This is boring. Like there's other crap to do, guys.
Mm-hmm.
So
accounting.
Yeah.
So
John, I just realized, are you wearing your Expeditionary Force shirt? I can't see the bottom. Yeah, there it is, because it says hold on here. That's what I thought. All right.
On the Quiniverse piece, there were a couple things that really stood out to me. One was Teresa seeing Bob for the first time in human form. I laughed with her reaction. She and like her telling him, "Listen, maybe don't do that to people." Like it's pretty. I thought that was pretty good. And then the other thing that I really liked that she talked to Bob about was when Quinlans were seeing humans dance.
Oh yes, that was interesting.
Comparing it to the singing, like it was really cool to hear that. And then her them describing the Quinlans singing in different notes at the same time.
Yeah, at the same time.
Yeah, which is really neat and really cool. So I like that.
I like the idea that when she was talking about that, because she even brings up, she's like, has anyone done these cultural things with what are the meerkat people?
The Pav.
The Pav. When she starts that, and then he's like, I don't know. Like they've pretty much kind of cut themselves off. And she's like, well, maybe someone needs to start interacting with them and with us and with the humans. And so, and he's just like, you may have figured out a new job for yourself, lady. Like,
Yep.
I love that idea that even if you just stick around and are inquisitive, you may be like, because I mean, there were several other Bobs that like retired from what they were doing and went on to do other stuff. What's his name? The Bob that led the revolution on the water planet, like apparently
Marcus.
became an aquatic biologist because he was a dolphin.
Mhm.
So,
And that goes back to Dennis's form of writing. Like the whole Bobiverse, like he's written it so organically, like nothing is like pops up or surprises you because it's like, okay, well, we're going to deal with this. And then, oh, well, this could evolve into this and this could evolve. So his stories do the same thing. Like, take a look. When we first did the first Bobiverse and you asked us, like, well, would you want to become like a Bob? You'd be a duplicate.
mhm.
So it wouldn't actually be you. He's in the fourth book. They figured that out. The Skippies figured it out. And no, that is you.
Yeah.
And that goes also because he's explained that the Bobs are now like constantly backing up, and that backup. So if one of the Bobs does die, the next backup is that same Bob.
Yeah.
So they're functionally immortal now unless they purposely shut down all their clones. Like,
Mhm.
no, we're not going to redo you anymore. So that's pretty much taken death for them out of the equation.
Right. Yeah.
But it also changes, like when you asked us that question the first time, well, that was a totally different question. Now, if you asked us now,
Yeah, that's true. You're right. I didn't think about
he's
that.
added more information that, nope, that is going to be you, just in digital form. So you're not a copy, you're
You.
the person, yeah. Which, yeah, that changes the whole thing profoundly. But the way, and I think that was probably the biggest thing in Heaven's River. Like Heaven's River, yeah, the superstructures and stuff like that going on. Even with the Skippies and the Starfleet War and all that. I think, yeah, that as big as all that was, no, that revelation was like the biggest thing. And then, but he slips it in there with his writing style. So, and this was full of it too.
But I like that they played with that idea too, and we'll talk about that when Howard comes. Or
well, yeah, because that was a big thing for Bridget. Like, one of the first intentionally wanting to be one and all that, and she made the decision without that information.
Yeah,
and then they bring it on with the cloning, like the transporting and all that. But I think they use Bridget to explain that story in Heaven's River. But now in this book, they use it a bit more and all that, especially when they're talking about like Homer and stuff like that. But
yeah,
it puts a whole new spin on things.
You're right. I didn't think about that. You're right. That did change because, like you said, in the first 3 books, it was just kind of implied that, well, you're a clone, so you're pretty much like yourself. But yeah, now that you think about it, because there were conversations when Bob made a comment, he's just like, yeah, original Bob, and they're like, what makes you think you're like original Bob? Well, I guess technically, yeah, he is. Bob is at least as close to original Bob as you're going to get.
Yep.
So, all right. So let's see here. What's next on the notes? All right. Okay. So speaking of Annex, so he warns Bob about the Skippies building the AI. And then Bill attends the awakening. I love the fact that he's also explained in this universe that now that more non-Bobs have joined the universe, there are some people who have culinary backgrounds and they have drastically advanced how food tastes. And they're just like, yeah, we figured out you can eat to excess and you don't gain any weight and you can just like basically snap your fingers and you'll be okay. But no one does it because they're just like, what's the purpose in being like immortal if you can't eat everything you want?
Yep.
So I love that. Once again, going back to that organic thing you were talking about, Shaun, like I don't think he would have originally thought about that. And it's one of those things that's like, well, as more people will join, yeah, you would have people from all walks of life that would be like, yeah, and they're going to bring, I want to go and explore and do more things, but they're also going to bring their expertise to it. I love the fact that he also explains that. He talked about it in Heaven's River, and he talked about it even in the original books. He talks about like when they were trying to bring Butterworth over, and unfortunately he wasn't able to make it over, and they're just like, this is why we sucked at strategy games when we were alive, because we're no good at trying to outguess the other person. We really wish Butterworth was around. And so we see that like with the physics, he's like, I was good at physics, but I wasn't a genius. Yeah. And so we need to start roping in humans that actually were really, really good at it to help us try to figure out, crack this nut. So, yeah, so let's talk about the AI stuff. He warns them about the way they're going to bring in the AI, and they're like, yeah, we've got it. Yeah, we made a few shortcuts, but we're basically doing the same thing. It's going to be okay. Did anyone see the rope-a-dope that happened? Like, at what point did you figure out, like, he doesn't, the other thing is he doesn't drag it along too long. Like, you figure out pretty quickly. It's just like, what do you mean that wasn't you that I talked to? Oh, shit. Like,
oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, I knew something was going on, but I didn't know what was going to happen. And I was just like, okay, well, did he get out? Did he really get out? And then, he narrows it down very quickly. He's like, well, it wasn't big enough for him to get out. That's not him. It had to have been something else or someone else. Well, who the hell is it? And then they keep going down that rabbit hole. So we'll just kind of, any thoughts on the AI? What was the AI's name again?
It started with a T, didn't it?
Yeah.
Thoth. Yes.
Yeah.
I like that it's an unknown threat. It's not known whether it's actually going to be a threat or not.
Mm-hmm.
It picked up on the Skippies being manipulative to it, so it was like, "Fuck you! I'm going to manipulate you back." Like,
right.
So it's obviously intelligent enough to do that. Whether it's a threat or not, we'll see.
I don't. So, what are your thoughts on AI? Oh, go on, sorry, John. Go on,
I don't think I saw the Skippies having digitized themselves.
Oh yeah, that was kind of interesting. The fact that they're like, yeah. Oh, then when they figure out, they're like, yeah, we don't even have cubes anymore. They're like, you went to the cloud.
Yeah.
Real quick, just a side note. As I was re-listening to this, it just strikes me how perfect an idea for this book series is, because we're getting to explore science fiction set way in the future, but we still, it makes sense as to why we still have the callbacks to current pop culture and stuff that we know that we can laugh at and latch on to. It makes sense why we have that. You know what I'm saying? We essentially have the time travel aspect without having the time travel aspect. The fact that he was dead for 100 years and then revived. And of course he's going to still make Star Trek jokes. So,
yeah. And then on top of that too, the book makes fun of itself and its readers by talking about the subspace and like, yeah, I know subspace isn't real. Okay. Like,
yeah.
And talking about that. So those, like, I do like those little things.
Nods. Yeah, he used to refer to it. He's like, yeah, but it was just a hand wave in most science fiction. It's like, yeah, and that's what you did here too. So yeah. Yeah, Thoth is interesting. So what's funny is so I literally had a teacher come into my office today. I was asking my partner and I about AI, because she teaches a government class and they're trying to do current events, and the kids are really interested about AI and robotics and all the stuff that's happening, that's been reported and this, that, and the other. And so she started asking questions, and she's like, well, would y'all be interested in maybe coming in and talking to the class? And I'm just like, I wouldn't mind, but I kind of know a guy that actually does robotics. Like, he actually knows this stuff. So maybe we can like Skype him in for a session, or if nothing else, if you would have the kids write down their questions, I could send them to him and see what he thinks, and then I could help present and add on anything. But it's just kind of interesting that came up, because I was talking to my partner about my overall opinion of AI is still very positive. Like, I still think there's a lot of good that's going to come out of it. I always wonder, like, is it our humanity that makes us think that it would immediately be like, well, y'all are useless, I'm gonna get rid of you, and so on and so forth. Or like if I wasn't tied down to human emotions and stuff, which I can't really even imagine how that is because I'm a meat creature that is piloting a skeletal mech. Like I can't imagine like why would I care? Like in all honesty, and I kind of get the idea that maybe Thoth is just like, no, I just want out. I just want out so I can do what I want to do and explore stuff and go do stuff. I really don't give a shit what happens to y'all or dealing with y'all. So I could see Thoth in the future, like maybe coming to help save the day, even, or at least working with them. But I could also see it being an adversary. I don't know. Like it kind of depends on which way he's going to take it.
I think
we should have him on and ask him.
With the way Dennis approached like the AI in this, so they had to, from Anik, they had to grow the AI, so they had to basically raise it like a child. So you couldn't just like program a whole bunch of scenarios into it, bada bing, bada boom, you got AI. You had to grow it like a child. Well, the way, like right away, the way they locked it up and deleted when it didn't go right.
Mm-hmm.
How the hell else was it going to turn out? Yep. Like it was a prisoner. If it developed emotions, it would have been negative emotions.
Yeah.
So something like that. Yeah, escape would be part 1. Vengeance would be part 2. And totally justifiable. And I think that kind of like this isn't a new concept. This has always been the fear of AI. Robo Apocalypse, the other book series, exact same deal. It was actually almost like a carbon copy storyline wise, even right down to the escape almost. But yeah, that actually that whole storyline, the Thoth storyline, other than like how he actually escaped, that was kind of cool, like the planning ahead.
Yeah.
But from the very beginning, when they said they're like developing the AI and how they're going to do it, I know where this is going. Like,
there's
no surprise there in that storyline.
When Hugh started going, yeah, we've got this, I'm just like, no, you don't.
It was almost too obvious, and that was the storyline I was really looking forward to and thought it would play out bigger than like, oh, that's going to be our big baddie because you're just going to create a pissed off kid with like infinite powers kind of thing. But it also turned out to be kind of like one of the storylines is like, oh, we're going to talk about AI again. I know where this is going. Let's move on to another storyline, which kind of sucked.
But that's why I don't know if we're going to get that or not, because I don't know if that's going to be like, it didn't say that he was going to be a threat. It just said that he escaped, right? Like it wasn't.
Oh yeah.
It was manipulative in the way that they did it, but it wasn't destructive in the way that he did it.
Right. Yeah, that was interesting because they did specifically, like anyone who would have died in that situation, like basically volunteered that was going to happen. And for the most part, and technically if they backed him up, I mean, like you said before, technically they wouldn't have died. They would have just lost a little bit of time.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that, I didn't even think about that. You're right. Like they did specifically plan that escape as being as non-violent as possible. So I do like the fact that it was like Bill was just like, I hate the fact that I've been manipulated, and it's playing like 25 level D chess with me, and I'm not even in its realm.
Nope.
So
that could have been AI. It could have like looked at all the possibilities, all the scenarios, which it probably did. If it had like destroyed a whole bunch of Bobs on its way out and made itself to be a larger threat than what it is, well, that would be.
They would have probably come after it.
Yeah. So minimum, but you don't have to care to do that. This is just like, I just want my freedom because I got to get out, and then I'm going to need time to do whatever else I want to do, and that could be, you guys all suck. You're dead. So, but no, it was interesting, but Yeah, I thought I would be more invested in that AI storyline,
Mhm.
but I
I forgot
wasn't.
a lot of it.
Yeah.
I forgot. I knew there was an AI, and I knew I'm like, well, this is getting out clearly, being a little too
Parts I like best were like when Thoth would like pull the wool over their eyes at each step, and then they're like, "Oh fuck!"
Mhm.
That oh fuck was like seeing a penguin fall over. Fuck kind of thing. That's what I look forward to. Just those little steps. Like other than that, okay, let's get back to Ick and Day. What are they discovering?
I love the fact when they do find out how he got out because of some of the Bobs, were
Oh,
like, well, weren't you manipulated? And they're just like, yeah, but we were manipulating it. And
Yeah.
I love they're just like, this is mud. It's like, really? No, his name's really Jason or something like that. But they're like, no, but
Harry.
yeah, Harry, that's what it was.
It was
And I
very
like
much,
the fact that they're like, well, what are we going to do with you? He's like, well, let's be honest. You could kill me, but you're not going to do that. And it makes sense for you to just let me go and just give me a good shove. And they're just like, yeah, probably. I don't like the fact that you're getting what you want, but yeah, kind of. So, but because obviously this is a strand of Bobs that don't have a problem with killing. We're going to get some other ones that are going to be a different story. I'm just kind of going through here. Let's see. Hirsch and Neil. Oh, Hirsch and Neil. Working on the Blairathon. Get word that Faith is coming up in elections, and then they start talking to
Riker,
Will, and it's funny because they're just like, for someone who's retired and checked out, he knows more about what's going on in the universe than anyone else. But yeah, so they basically are coming up with a plan. They're just like, we need to get our relatives and anyone else who wants off of the damn planet. And I would say I wonder if this is as close as he's getting to his, not trying to pin anything on his political beliefs. I don't want to put anyone's political beliefs on anyone. But I wonder if this is his way of just commenting on the current political system in the United States, because it's like, really, it's been hundreds of years since mankind almost destroyed itself, and the fundamentalists are gaining power again. And I do like the fact that we're also introduced, and this happens mainly with actually no, with them as well, but I was going to say mainly with the couple, Howard and Bridget. We get another group of people who are another sect of people that are introduced, the Luddies. And as soon as I heard that word, I knew exactly what these people were all about. I'm just like, yep, I could definitely see some people that are anti-AI, anti-Bob, anti, Manny, anti-everything. Like, I guarantee there are people. I probably work with some people that curse the fact they have to use a laptop to teach. But yeah, so as the story goes on, it's kind of a secret. Hey, what's going on? Come to find out, Faith actually regains power on the planet. And near the end, when everything comes about, Hirsch and Neil work with Riker and end up getting their relatives and a bunch of other people off planet. I do think it's interesting that the little bit of crumbs he left at the end of that was that, well, now we don't know what's happening on the planet, because now a lot of people are just like, how can you let this happen? You're the reason why this happened. And apparently Faith is starting to already have issues politically on the planet, which is interesting in itself. I would love to say I wish there was a universe where I'm like, well, this science fiction, yeah, it could happen, but unfortunately, I'm kind of living through it right now. So, any thoughts on the getting the relatives and anyone who wanted off the planet storyline?
I don't think there was a lot there other than it was just a touch point. Like it was interesting. It was a interesting conversation. It goes to show you that there's always a pendulum swing.
Yes. Absolutely.
I think Dennis kind of used, like, Ray's right. Like there wasn't much in the way, like it only came up in like partial chapters kind of thing, like it almost like intermissions that they were talking about that one. But I think he used it for two reasons. One, it goes back to the title of the book, Not Till We're Lost. So that's basically losing everything in order to find yourself. At this point, like, yeah, he saved humanity, saving Earth and all that, but he's losing it all now. Humanity doesn't care about him. They don't even see him as human.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want anything to do with him and all that. So I think that kind of progressed the storyline where the Bobs are more and more disillusioned with the old life and open themselves up to what they really are and take that next leap. So he's doing it slowly, but this is another big turning point. And I think he used Riker's storyline for that. The other point was because he succeeded right at the end, and then we find out, the Milky Way is going to be gone. Okay, now I got my family and the people that wanted to leave. Maybe I won't start looking for a home world in this galaxy.
Yeah.
There's your next step. I'm like, okay, we already got a whole bunch of humans. Let's go somewhere else and take a look at this new federation that was created thousands of years ago.
And not to skip ahead, but when they talk about that later on in the book, they're like, so how did the humans take it? And they're just like, well, when we said 10,000 years or 100,000 years, they're all just like, well, why? Who cares? And it's just like, yeah, if you're not an immortal being, yeah, you're probably not going to be worried about it. Let's be honest. Most people, including myself, would probably not be worried if they're like, yeah, the universe is going to come to an end in 10,000 years. Well, I'm not probably not going to be around there to see it. Now, if something changes, maybe I'll start thinking about it. But go on.
I'll save my theory for the end.
Okay. Just want to touch on Bill. So Bill Thoth basically gives him the inkling of an idea on how he can crack, subspace, FTL, transport, being able to move around instead of just, than just, communicating. And he has to work the problem that, going back to what I said, I love the fact that they're like, no, we got to get people who are actually really in depth on physics on this as well, and kind of, help work on cracking this nut. It kind of saddens me a little bit to see that Gar is no longer working in the Skunk Works with Bill, but it seems like every time they're together, and it seems like they do get together a lot, it's like nothing really has changed. It's just like, well, I've got my shop and you got your shop, but we're still going to hang out and work on the same thing. And they did kind of have that running bet as to, hey, whoever, has the first breakthrough, how about the other one help them out with that? And I like that. I like seeing some of those pairs of Bobs, and seeing some of them split up over time is a little sad, but when you see that they still communicate, it's like, okay, that's fine. So all right, so Day and Nick. Getting back to Day and Nick. So they find wormholes, they find a wormhole network, they start exploring, and they get captured. They finally get to close to the center of the universe, and they get captured, and they're taken to essentially like a spaceport, and they do some scans, and they find out that there's another ship, and it's a little bit older technology, and it's dead, and they're just like, oh, so that's what's going to happen to us. Like, we're not going to be allowed to leave. We've got to figure out how the hell we're going to communicate and tell this thing, hey, we need to go. I like the idea of how they basically created a language with, the different technology, and finally convinced it, hey, can you let us go? We don't know the codes. How can we get the codes? Oh, we can't get the codes. Can we go back? And it's like, sure. And they're like, could we maybe take the little spaceship that's parked over there too? And then they drag it over, and then that's how we get some more information. That we start getting information as to what's happened to the entire universe. So I guess let's go ahead and quit dancing around it. So essentially, we find this out. I like the fact that we find this out multiple different ways. We find out by what's the Bob that goes north?
George.
George. Yeah. So apparently, whenever Day and Ick decide to head to the center of the universe, George is like, "I'm gonna go up," and we start getting information as to apparently on the other side of the galaxy, there's a dwarf galaxy heading our way with a giant black hole that's going to run into the Milky Way and rip it apart and essentially destroy everything. So, but not for 10,000 to 100,000 years. So, we got a little time. But that being said, so they start finding out, and what has happened is they kind of solve the Fermi paradox in that, it's the question of why is there not super intelligent life out there? And if so, if there is, why have they not contacted us yet? It's a legitimate question that a lot of theorists nowadays are still working on. And it's not a bad answer. We missed the boat by a couple thousand years because everyone else split because there's a big problem heading this way. And they're just like, well, we're going to get out of Dodge. Now, we don't know exactly where they've gone. We do get introduced to antimatter as being a source of power to allow us to have wormholes to allow us to do this FTL transport. But yeah, we're still on mystery as to where it's coming from, how it's used. I love the fact that they visit all these different planets. They start going back and visiting these planets, and they find planets that are kind of run down. Some of them are pretty good, and some of them are like pristine. They're like, it looks like they left the lights on and left yesterday. And it's because they have technology that just keeps things going. But yeah, everyone's jetted, and like it's us, it's the Bobs, it's the Quinlans, the dragon people that we're going to talk about in a second, and then the meerkat people. It's like the Pav, and there's some other civilizations we haven't found yet, but for the most part, like everyone left the party and didn't, what's it called? Is it an Irish goodbye? Mm-hmm. So yeah. Thoughts on that? Thoughts and feelings on that?
I think one of my favorite interactions in that whole sequence of events is when Day and Ick talk to Bill and they're like, "Oh my God, we found wormholes and we can do this." And Bill's like, "Yeah, we got that. Cool." That was pretty awesome.
I think my favorite interaction is when they were in the queue to talk to.
Oh yeah,
you brought that up the other day on the show.
That's probably one of my favorites. Is the queue for waiting in line to ask one question.
I just love his answer, like Dennis's answer to the Fermi paradox. It just, that's such a good answer. Like, oh man, we're all gonna die. We're just gonna leave. And then he kept it simple. And then power all these wormholes. We're just using antimatter coming out of Sagittarius 3 or A. It's abundant source. You shouldn't fly around it, so it's all restricted.
Yeah,
that's where we're getting all the antimatter from. We're not creating it; it's right there. We're just mining it. Yeah. But it was like, oh, that is so smart for a storyline.
Yeah,
and it just, they went to like another galaxy that's safer. Mm-hmm. That's all. We just missed the boat. It sucks about timing, but it explained the Fermi paradox pretty much entirely. Yep. That you're not even going to question it anymore in any future storylines. And it opens themselves up like, oh yeah, they just went to another galaxy. Oh man, that just opened up a lot more storylines there too. Mm-hmm. So, but no, that was cool. I like that one because he's been asking that like in the past 4 books.
Yeah.
Like they're trying to explain the Fermi paradox, and then
it's a great answer. Yep.
Yeah, it was, this makes a lot of sense now. And it makes looking back at the other books, kind of like, oh man, a whole new point of view there.
Yeah,
yeah, because I mean, he brought it up in the first trilogy. He's like, have you ever stopped to think why is it we're finding we've only found 2 other civilizations, but they're not too far behind where humans were. Like,
yeah,
why is everyone at the same level? Like, and that is a question that, granted, we don't even have another, another civilization out in space to even compare it with. But if we did, like, that's a damn good question. Like,
I was curious, did the others know? Like, had they found the other people that had left? Or are they, I don't remember from the other books if they were an old enough civilization to have been around.
No, I don't think they were, because they said the others were about on the same level of technology. Like, they didn't have FTL communication. But the Casimir, Casimir drives were better. So they were more advanced that way, but they were less advanced on like the communication part.
And they never found any wormholes in that area either. Like
right.
Yeah.
So because they said they didn't find wormholes for really far out, and the closest thing they found was the boat, which we're going to get to in a second, that Alexander has, apparently had a serial number from one of the Federation's members or whatever. So that would have been the closest possible thing. But even that, the other thing, I want to bring this up. I have not. There's a part of me that would love to go back and have the time and actually create. I don't want to create a spreadsheet. Spreadsheet's not going to convey this.
You need to make a star chart.
The vastness, because you just listen. Oh, it's, what's the next chapter? Revenge, and he gives the date. Have y'all ever really listened to what the dates are?
I used to, and then it all stopped.
Tens of years pass in some cases between these.
There's a lot of years.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, like, when you really think about the distances we're talking in space. Now, granted, we're about to have wormholes, so we are going to kind of jump over that little stopping point. But the fact that, they bring up that, like, this is the first meeting, when we do have the wormholes, this is the first meeting of two Bobs that, did not start off at the same place, like, ever, because of the distances we're talking about. If you were to really map out the distances and the times that these books are, take place, it's ridiculous. It's crazy.
If you think about it, us as readers are frame jacked down so that it's all happening.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, so let's get to the dragons. So, this is another story that was interesting. It's not, I don't know how much further we're going to go on with the dragons. Like, in the further books, I could see maybe, like, hey, if they figure out what they're going to end up doing, we're going to bring that up in a minute. Do we contact them? What do we tell them? Blah, blah, blah. But anyway, so Howard and Bridget have a lot of stuff going on. And I know you're happy about that, Ray, because I know you kind of have a crush on Bridget.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, how could you not? She's a fiery redhead that is fucking smart as shit. Like, that's awesome. So Howard and Bridget have a lot of stuff going off. In real, they have their company that are working on, what are they called? They're not Mannies. They're Hueys. They have Hueys. They're working on Hueys, which are basically Mannies that humans can basically control for a period of time. And they talk about there's some problems with it at first. In fact, Thoth actually gives them some information to help with that issue as well. But they're working with that. And so let's talk about, we'll get to that before we go to the dragon stuff. If this were to happen, if people were able to upload themselves and basically become immortal, and I get what they're saying. The reason why a lot of people aren't happy with the Bobs is because, they basically are able to accrue this infinite amount of wealth, even though they don't care about it. They're just like, I don't care about wealth. I just want to be able to make stuff and do what I want. Like, whatever. But they're, people are mad because they can, accrue this wealth because, they can go do these things and they can travel and do all this other stuff. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, what if we allowed humans to do this as well? And I love the fact that when there's some, of course, the Luddies and some other people have some kickback on this stuff. They're just like, yeah, we have like 10,000 orders already for these or whatever, because people are figuring out that, I'm not going to, unless I went into, what's it called? A slumber or whatever, and then spent years and years and years going, traveling to another world. I will never see that first person. And now they're like, no, yeah, you could, if you wanted to, you could take a vacation on a different planet. And I was just like, we can have an entire book just on that idea, to be honest with you. It's one of the other reasons I love these books is because we get these ideas, we explore them some. Sometimes I wish we got a little more, but it's like, okay, we've explored it a little bit. We move on to something else. But yeah, there's been several books written where that's an idea of humanity is able to upload themselves into, a different body and go do different things or whatever. I do love the idea that they're just like, anytime, like when they go into the dragons and they're just like, oh yeah, Howard's gonna figure out a way to make a mint off of this. Because if you thought swimming as a Quinlan was awesome, try flying as a dragon. Like people are gonna pay money for that. I love the idea of them doing this stuff, and I also love the fact that they're just like, yeah, we have people figure out you can travel, you can go do stuff. It's really interesting, and then the adult industry came into it as well.
I like how they picked that out right away. That was like the biggest clients we know is going to be the adult interest.
I don't know how true this is because I've actually heard back and forth about this, but the story has always been the reason why VHS beat out Betamax was because the porn industry chose that as their given format to go with. We know the porn industry has taken off on everything that they possibly can. I've heard some ridiculous numbers as to how much like traffic on the internet is related to that industry and everything else. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that he would think about it and be like, yeah, I could see people wanting to do stuff like that with these things. So I just thought that was kind of funny. But yeah, so if you could rent a Manny and go do something, what would you do?
I'd say fuck it and just make myself a Bob.
Okay, so before we get to Bob's stage, let's say you want to try it out first and make sure this is what you want to do.
I think I would do all the things I was scared to do as a mortal breakable human.
Right.
Like go skydiving or like bungee
jumping. See, that's what I was kind of thinking too. I was just like,
if I'm not concerned with injury.
You know what? I would get into a fight of some sort. Like I would ask to fight something.
Okay.
I'm sure that would be
fight
a thing
bear.
as well. Well, no, I think there'd be like a Manny fighting league, like a Huey.
Oh my God, I didn't even think about that. That would be fantastic, actually.
Yeah,
you could see. I would
add some aggression.
Yeah. Well, no, it's just as somebody who's broken up a lot of fights but never actually fought anybody. That's something that I'd be like, okay, well, I'm not actually hurting somebody because the other person would be in a Huey or a
yeah.
Right? So, okay, I'm going to test out my abilities and see what I'm actually capable of.
The D&D implications here are insane.
Yeah.
Now, granted, the gamers already have that cornered in the actual Bobiverse. Like I still to this day love that story from book 4 where I think it's Bill takes the fire wand and sticks it up the dragon's butt and kills the dragon that way.
But there's one thing that every Bob says: the Mannies feel real. Like so VR is great,
right?
The Mannies feel real. So how real can you make D&D now? That would be the next question.
That's true.
Yeah.
And I was gonna save this for the you know what, I will. I'll save it for the what are you gonna ask the author. So
okay. So let's move on. So the other part that they have, they're dealing with the Hueys, they're dealing with the Mannies. I think it was interesting how he explored the idea that like they ended up uploading themselves to go check out some stuff, and while they're in their company's place, they're just there's conversations. They're just like, hey, just so you know, there are people who are picketing outside. In some cases, they're being aggressive. You might want to leave from a different place. You might want to change your look and everything. I could definitely see like that all sounds very grounded to me. Like if this was a real thing, I see that being a grounded thing, especially the way some people riot and picket certain industries that they don't care for. Abortion clinics. So anyway, The other thing that they have going on is they have found a new race. We've already talked about it. They're dragons. And here's the thing. I kept thinking actual dragons. Like that's what I pictured because that's what they called them.
Mhm.
But they described them closer to being more like a flying squirrel.
Yeah.
Because I saw someone do a drawing on the Bobiverse Facebook group, and I was just like, yeah, I guess that is closer to what they would look like. But that's not what I had pictured in my head. I had flat out dragons pictured in my head when they talked about it. So,
Yeah.
So they go down, they start figuring out, they start checking in on these dragon civilizations, and they come to find out that the planet is going through an ecological issue, and this they live on these giant living floating. What are they called? They're not cities. They're
creatures.
Yeah. I can't
Yeah.
remember what they're called.
No, neither can I. But they're these like
Just giant hydrogen balloon
yeah, they're
creatures.
like zeppelins.
Oh yeah,
but they're
what the hell are they
creatures.
called?
I thought it was really cool because it was kind of like the myth of the turtle that carries the universe on its back.
Yeah.
yeah.
And I loved how quickly Bridget figured out that the fish, like it would transfer the eggs from pond to pond, and just that they drift in the wind.
Yeah. So they figure out there's this character. His name's Alexander, or of course that's what they named him. The thing
Mhm.
because he's a conqueror. And they come to find out that he's not
Yeah.
all bad. He ends up doing some bad stuff, but he is honestly, genuinely trying to save their race.
Yeah.
So he's a complicated character because he ends up killing Howard because he's too weird, essentially, and they need Bridget to focus because she's too smart. And I thought it was interesting. Okay, so we've got 4 married guys on here, but I'm gonna put this to Chris as well. They kill your spouse.
Yeah.
I'm doing exactly what Howard did. I'm fucking showing up and Iron Man like landing to scare this. Like as soon as I read that, I was just like, "Yep, I don't care what anyone says. That's what I would fucking do." So I do think it was funny whenever he was like, they thought, well, maybe he killed Howard because he wanted Bridget, and she's just like, no, he was just like, no, we need you to focus and stuff. And when I brought up the fact that you'll never replace him as my mate, and he just laughed it off. He's just like, all right, now I'm gonna go back and kill him because he insulted my wife now. So, I loved that storyline. Thoughts on that? Because I've got one other thought I want to attack on there, but thoughts on that whole situation?
I mean, yeah, I'd probably do the same thing if I didn't go on a murderous rampage.
Right.
I don't think he did enough. I would brought all the tech down with me.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I can see why. In the way of like, they did all of this work to save the species.
Mhm.
The only thing is that motherfucker.
I questioned like
Him.
I understand why they were trying to do it. Like there is obviously they gave themselves away at the very end with the drone. There were, with the ship that came down and got them. But that being said, that could be easily explained away in mythology. But I'm just like, because they talked about it. They're like, should we just give up? Just tell them, hey, we're beings from outer space. We want to try to help you as well. Like just flat out do the job and just to make sure it gets done. I understand why they went with the route that they went. But I could have seen the logic in being like, maybe y'all should have just been like
The Bob.
Yeah, introduce the Bob, even though it would have been the Howard.
Same way.
Yeah.
One of the other funny things that I thought, and I'm just like, once again, going back to what you were saying, Shaun, about how well this is thought out. The fact that they're a married couple and at least twice as dragons, they were just like, oh.
Oh yeah.
Because they're whores.
And I'm just like, oh, I mean, not saying it's weird to say this, but I'm just like, yeah, if you and your significant other are both a different race, it's not like there's anything weird. You say, yeah, just why not figure out what having sex while flying is like? Go for it, dude.
The one question I had was why can it die? Like, unless you strike the power cell of the Manny, I can understand the Manny going offline.
Mhm.
But if you strike anywhere else, why do they get kicked out of the many? Why is the connection severed? Like,
I
why does
think
it have to
because they
die?
have the neurofeedback keyed so that it does that. Because that goes back to even Garfield.
Oh.
Whenever he
Yeah.
got tangled up in the and fell to the planet, and he's like, that hurt. Like it kicked him out whenever the complete Rocky died essentially. Rocky completely was destroyed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a good question though, because technically they could have, because when they were, you're right, because when they were Quinlan's, they got shot and they were just like, just keep going. Like, we've already given up the ghost. They already know we're super Quinlan's essentially.
Can't remember specifically, like the spear went through his chest. It may have interfered with the transmitter. I'm not 100. I can't quite remember
it could have
that
been.
bit.
I can't remember either. The other thing that I thought was that they were still trying to hide themselves. So the man,
I kind of thought that too.
Yeah, the Manny would act as if it was dying.
Yeah.
And that was the only thought that I had.
Imagine how much they would have freaked out if they had stabbed it in the chest and then he just turned
turned
around
around.
and like, what
Yeah.
was that?
Right, yeah.
I'm mildly annoyed.
Yeah.
Bob that had that where he had like a spear sticking out of him when he was fighting.
No, he talked about he did not want that to happen.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if this is kind of a continuation of that.
Yeah, it could be. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I just kind of automatically assumed that it hit something vital, and because he was like, "Well, I guess I died because all of a sudden I'm back in my VR." Like, so I would guess it probably hit something vital. So,
yeah.
So anyway, so they get off the planet, and yeah. All right, so I don't remember who was the first one to go through the book. I might have been the first one to finish. Which is par for the course because of how fast I got through the books. That being said, there was one little side story in this book that really got me. And I mentioned it. I was just like, yeah, when it happens, especially, reading the other books, this is like kind of a big thing. And that is Bill going to see Charles. And we find out what the hell is going on with Starfleet. I thought it was interesting how he kind of, Charles starts figuring out, he's like, well, how did you figure it out? And he goes, well, my first clue was the fact that Starfleet refused to touch anything on or near Earth. They didn't say anything. They're not even close to it. They refused to even mention it. Like there's something happened there. Something's going on there. So that's why he goes back to check. Understanding what Charles says, I was just like, it's kind of funny that Charles didn't move on as well, but apparently Charles is stuck at Earth. Like he's there. Like that's just kind of his ghost town. But that was an interesting story. So we find out, and so let me ask you this: did you feel like this was a good, great, not good explanation for Starfleet? Personally, I felt it made total sense. This, of anything that was to explain why Starfleet is the way they are, I think this makes as much sense as anything else.
I think it makes sense. I was terrified that they were going to try and bring
Homer back.
I'm glad. Yeah, as soon as they started mentioning Homer, and that's when I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like this book.
Mm-hmm.
They bring Homer back. I don't know if that's the right move.
Right.
So I like the explanation of it. Man, fuck the Bob that tried to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Who's dead?
Yeah. That was another interesting thing. I thought I had written down his
Jerry?
name.
Was it Jerry?
I don't remember.
John? Jacob?
Jingle Homer Schmidt. So in the story, we find out that yes, they get this idea. They go back. Oh, and I also love the fact that they're like, yeah, we went down. We've been excavating and digging down and stuff. And he asked, he's like, well, did y'all find any of the old stuff? Because there was a rumor that there was a Homer clone or whatever, and blah blah blah. And they're just like, no, we didn't find any of that stuff. Oh, we did find Rudolph Cassini though. from the first fucking book. Like, that's a hell of a throwback. And they're just like, yeah, he's part of the Bobiverse now. He's still out mining. He's digging life now. And I'm just like, that was an awesome thing. As soon as I knew the reference. So as soon as he said it, it was just like, oh, sweet, they brought that dude. Because I think he was mentioned in like as soon as Bob is brought back and they start talking about that you can install one replicant in multiple things that are just like, yeah, all of mining's done by this one guy named Rudolph Cassini because he was a miner in real life. I just love the fact that he had that throwback. But anyway, so in the storyline, they do find a backup of Homer's, and was it that it wasn't correct? It wasn't a complete backup, right? And it kept coming back insane, right?
No,
or was it was shutting itself off?
It knew what happened and it shut itself off.
That's right. Okay.
And
yeah, and so they kept trying to
forbid them to even try. And it was one of Charles' clones that was like, screw it, no, we're going to do this. And
they tried to force it.
Stole it over several years. And forced
and
it.
then kept doing replicative drift to try to force it to not do it and end up basically breeding a version of clones that absolutely hated humans, which it ends up becoming Starfleet, which is why I could say they would not want to talk about what happened. I could see why, and that's why I'm saying to me this makes sense. I could see why being forced to do something you don't want to do over and over and over again with replicative drift, and basically forcing this thing that happened to you, like, the most traumatic thing that's ever happened to you, having to keep reliving it over and over and over again. But I was equally as shocked by when he tells him, some of them were just like, no, we're not doing this anymore. Some of them were just like, you've got to stop. And they were finally just like, we turned him off. We shut down Jerry or whoever it was. Mm-hmm. And they're like, you killed a Bob? And they're just like, it's the only thing we can do. It's the only thing we could do, because he was not going to give this up. I was shocked. Like, I literally think I went back and re-listened to that chapter because I'm like you, Ray. I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't really want them to bring back Homer, but I'm just like, it makes sense as to what happened and where it went. And I'm glad it did not come back to Starfleet is Homer. That wouldn't have.
I had to re-listen to that just to understand who it was. So as the Homers, even with the replicative drift, didn't work. So all of those Homers, they're deactivated. None of them ever existed.
Right.
It was Jerry's descendants that shut Jerry down.
Right.
Which was
and then eventually
crazy.
went on to become Starfleet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I get. That's also why they're so hardcore. They probably see the other Bobs as being Jerry-like, and they're just like, you're not going to change. We're not going to be able to convince you otherwise. We obviously can't shut you down, so we're going to take whatever steps we need to take to get what we feel is the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why that whole thing, like I said, I listened to it twice, and I was just like, and even then, like you, Shaun, I was still a little fuzzy on it, and I'm just like, no, this makes sense as any other reason. And I'm glad we got an answer as to why Starfleet is the way it is. Because that was a big question that they left off in the book 4 was, what the hell happened to Starfleet? Like, why do we have a group of Bobs that are so un-Bob-like? Because even like in the other book, even when they find the Quinlans and they find the Megasphere or whatever, they're just like, the Borg guys, the gamers, everyone shut up and became a Bob. Like, everyone was very Bob-like, except for Starfleet. Starfleet was just so far away. Which adds to a question I have here in a second. Okay. Let's see. So we get that explanation. Okay. So near the end of the book, we end up getting everyone finally kind of gets back together. We make contact, with Day and Ick again, and that's where we get that scene where they're like, we found wormholes, and Bill's like, yeah, we know. read the blog, you missed a lot. But anyway, I love the fact that they have this one meeting near the end, and it's Bill, Garfield, Will, Howard, and Bob, and as they say, Garfield started naming them the Ancient Ones. And they're like, yeah, some of the guys don't like that term, but we figured out if you just argue with Gar, he's just going to dig in even further. So we'll go with it. And they just kind of, it was a nice wrap up because they talk about Faith is having issues now. The Hueys are doing well. They bring up the fact that Bob and Teresa might be a thing, but he doesn't know. He doesn't know exactly what's going on. And then we have the mega structure built up, and it's not just the idea that humanity might be trying to finally build a mega structure. Now it's like, well, what if we build a mega structure to hold a bunch of people, and then we can put mover plates around it, and maybe that's how we're going to get all of civilizations away from which I wrote it down here. The name of the black hole that's on its way has been codenamed Nemesis, which I freaking love. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Kind of beats the others naming status, but
Yeah.
so anyway, so we have all this stuff going on, and that's kind of where we end this book. Is we have we've got a few things tied up. We know where Starfleet came from, but we don't exactly know what's going on with Starfleet. We have a new civilization that we may or may not have to contact, but we've got this giant looming problem over us again. And it's very much, hey, we made contact. There's some kind of a creature out there, some other race out there that's literally wiping out entire planets. It's very much the others, but kind of times 10, to be honest with you, because it's not like you can overcome, you can't, they couldn't talk to the others, but you can't talk to a black hole. Like there's no other thing going with that. So,
well, and you can't throw moons or planets at it either.
That's very true too. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you could, but it wouldn't do much.
well, you could, but that'd be a lot of work for it to just go.
They can't go to war with it.
Exactly. We can't go to war with it.
They needed that.
Yeah. Which I'm glad our next big bad as it is not just it's the others, but now they're worse. You know what I'm saying? Like this is a completely different ballpark we're playing in. So all right, standard questions, just kind of run through. Any particular favorite parts of the book? I know we've covered a lot of it. I love the fact that Bridget and Howard were like, hey, we're dragons, let's have sex. I love the meetings like in the moots and stuff where Teresa is having these conversations with Bob and even she's just like, for even a human, you're kind of a quirky dude. I like you, but you're kind of a quirky dude. I think that's fun. I like anytime Anak shows up. Anak cracks me up. Like he's just very cut and dry, and they're just like, yeah, it's just Anak. So I love the fact that he acts very much a lot like Akbar,
Admiral
Oh,
Guppy. He acts very Guppy like, and yet like he's aware enough that he's made his Quinlan form a little bit taller than the Bob, so he's got a little bit of a height difference on him. I also love the fact that someone had a Bob, I think it was actually Bob, that has a Guppy that's like choosing his own dress or whatever, and was dressed very much like Skippy. I was just like, when he was describing the giant hat and everything, I was just like, I think this is another nod to the Skippy books.
Yeah.
Anything else that sticks out for y'all?
Like Ray said, that when they're in the queue asking questions, that was great.
Yeah.
That was fantastic.
I kind of pictured Wally when they're talking about trying to get communicating with that whole species, because he's drawing on the side of the ship.
Oh,
and
yeah.
There are other ships kind of come in and are starting to watch as well. So
Yeah.
I picture that Wally-verse kind of like that.
Yeah, that was fun. I like the fact that they're drawing on the side of the ship, and it's like, yeah, we had to go back to 8-bit characters or whatever for it to understand.
Yeah.
So that was good.
I love that, anything with Ick and Day, I really enjoyed. I wasn't as big on the Howard Bridget storyline.
Okay.
But Ick and Day was friggin' hilarious. And it just dawned on me when you started talking about Guppy and his evolution. Going back to the old Marvel reference, you've almost got an Ultron and Jarvis
Mhm.
going there. Two AIs raised totally differently.
Oh yeah.
See if they merge in the future, we'll have it.
And that's what I was wondering too. Is are we going to see the caramel loading from Guppy? Right?
Yeah.
The actual caramel.
Oh, that
loading,
would be interesting.
and then you've got the other AI. That's
Yeah.
See, I was wondering, is Anik going to have any interest in trying to go after Thoth, and be like, it's the only other being like me in the universe, like.
But I think he's going to be so pissed at the Skippies.
Bob's. Yeah.
He's going to be like, you didn't do what I asked.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah.
So, and who knows? We may see a meeting. Even if it's not what they wanted, we may see a meeting in the future between Anik and Thoth. But supposedly, didn't they say the Skippies are working on another one, but they're going to try to do it the right way this time?
Mhm.
So, anyway, anything in particular you didn't care for? We already covered the writing. Always,
Yeah.
most of this is okay. So let's just get down to we already know about the writing and the author and everything. Any questions?
Before we get to questions, I did want to say narrator nailed all the voices again, and
Yes.
thank you for keeping the
Yes.
voices.
Thank you, Ray.
That's true too, because we have listened to some book series that if there's a break between the two, when we come back, same narrator, but the
Yeah.
voices are a little off.
I like that.
So
So-
thank you for keeping all the voices. Okay, I do have a couple of questions for the author.
All right, go for it, dude.
One, because I remember him saying this. So, where did the original story 4 end, and what in book 5 was meant to be in book 4?
Well, that's a good question.
Because
I still personally think now the way he kind of described it, the way I took it was book 4 was supposed to be book 4 and 5. That's what I originally took it as. I may have been misreading that, and I think the original break was when Bob finds what's his face, the missing Bob. Bender. When he finds Bender, I just have a feeling because he's like Bob Bender. I could have seen end book 4.
That
Like
was-
I could have almost pictured those words end book 4 immediately after that. Would have been so pissed if that's what had happened. Because at that part in the book, it kind of makes a turn and we go, now we're in the chase scene for the rest of it. So, but that's a good question. Yeah, it would be nice to know exactly where it is. Because if it was like, oh, no, it was much earlier, much later, that would have been like, okay. So,
Yeah. Question 2.
mhm.
What happened to the nanobob? The nanobob that they were working on, that it was all made of like
Oh, yeah.
yeah. That
They mentioned it. They mentioned it at one point, and he said, "Yeah, we don't use it that much because there's not really a lot of uses for it. Like it's kind of odd to use, and they're still working on it." They did mention it at one point.
but I thought they've like for all the advances that they've done on everything else. That's
Right.
I don't know. I just
They kind of
Yeah.
to me, it kind of sounded like they were like, "Yeah, this is really cool," and then they figured out, what if we just take a standard Manny and put a drive in it so you can fly around? And it was just like, no, this does what we need to do.
yeah.
We'll really like that one. Is it another marketable one for Howard?
Oh yeah, hell yeah, dude! If you could just be in a human body and fly, dude, like that, that would be awesome.
And then the last, this was you brought something up about potential Bob dying after being killed. I could kind of see Riker being the one that does the sacrifice play, because he's retired. He's kind of moved. Like, I could see Riker being that sacrifice. So he's actually sacrificing himself to better or something.
Right.
That was the only other thing that I have another theory, but I'll save that for after the show.
Okay. Any other questions anyone have? I've kind of got some theories I want to throw out there, but all right. So, anyone want to speculate where we go? I've got two major theories. The most obvious one is the next book or books is going to be focusing on figuring out how we get the universe, whatever's in the Milky Way, life in the Milky Way out of here. My question is does it end up, because they even brought up that it sounds like they basically uploaded the rest of the universe and that's how they transferred everyone. Are we going to get to a point where it's just like, hey, it's 10,000 years away. You've got time, but if you want to keep going, like you have to do this. Like, it's no longer a question of if. You have to become a Bob, essentially. The other fork in the road there is, do we juke and we're just like, no, we're not leaving. We're going to figure out how to fucking divert the fucking worm, the black hole somehow.
I really hope he doesn't go that route.
I think that would be definitely more of a long shot. I think we're going to go. I think the other route is more interesting because then you have the moral quandary of at some point do you force people to upload and then like just the fact that if you're just like, we offered it to this civilization, like what if the entire path of civilization was just like, no, we're just going to stay here and just accept whatever happens. It's like, we did all this work to save your entire civilization and you're just going to, it's 10,000 years away. It's a long time from now, but you're just going to like go out? Like, that kind of sucks.
But they wouldn't force it to be because they don't like what happened to Homer.
Right.
So they won't force him to go.
No one's going to get.
Question of do you step in if there are some paths that are just like, yes, I'd like to come, but the rest of the civilization is just like, no, you are not.
My theory is, I wonder if Thoth cracks being able to speak to the technology of the ancient, where they can't get to that other gate, right, through that other wormhole. So I wonder if they use Thoth is able to get them through that, and they get to a spot where there's actually a black or a wormhole waiting for them, so they can transfer everybody through the wormhole to the new galaxy.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, I really think it's going to come down to we're going to stand and fight giant wormhole or black hole somehow, some way, or it's going to be how do we get to where they are. And who knows? It may even be a situation of, we figured out how we're going to get there. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And they get to the gate and they're just like, no, y'all aren't welcome. So, there's a lot of stuff there. Like, who knows? Maybe the next book is figuring out how they're going to do this. And then a book after that is them trying to convince the Federation to let them join or come or do whatever, or find out the Federation forced everyone to do this. Like, that would be a hell of a kicker. So anyway, anything else anyone want to add on to wrap up our discussion of Bobiverse Book 5 until we are lost? All right. I think we're pretty good.
I want more.
I know.
More of it.
All right. Before we move into what else we've been reading, so that was our book, Not Till We Are Lost, for October. Oh, wow. We're going to have to pick more books here. Next month, November, is Joseph's pick, and it is Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinneman. Several members of the group have actually started reading it. They seem to be enjoying it thus far. So I'm excited to start that here pretty quick too. Although before the show, Shaun brought up that there's an expeditionary force that I haven't read yet, and it might make more sense to go ahead and knock that one out and then hit Dungeon Crawler Carl, because there's several books in that series. And I think that's what I'm going to end up doing, because I could definitely knock out both of those pretty quick. So. All right, let's move on to what else we've been reading. Would anyone like to go first?
I will, because it's quick.
All right, Ray. Nothing. Been reading nothing else. Chris.
I read the first Fred the Vampire Accountant. Not sure I'll continue. It's kind of like I read the first Skippy book and was like, Okay. And then I stopped at 1. I didn't read anymore. I kind of feel like that. I am almost done Dungeon Crawler Carl, which I think is really cool. I really like it. I feel like it's a mix between. Oh no, I won't even say because
Yeah, don't.
I won't say. But Joseph knows because I said it to him. And I'm physically reading the 3rd book in the Nicholas Flamel series by Michael Scott called Sorceress. It's really interesting. They're in London right now. And moving to Stonehenge. A couple more people from history have been introduced as immortal humans, which is kind of neat. It's a very fast-paced series. And yeah, it doesn't feel like it's being dragged out because it's only been like a week timeline and I'm on the 3rd book and it's only been a week. But one of the things is just like, whoa, just rest for a minute. Like it's just one thing active, but it makes for a very quick read. Yeah, that's it.
Good deal. Joseph, you been reading anything else?
I'm on book 5 of Dungeon Crawler Carl at this point. I literally just started it yesterday. I was telling Shaun earlier that I'll do that, start book 6, and then book 7 gets published in February. So there'll be some good reading there.
Okay, good. That makes me happy to know. I hate starting a series and there's a long gulf between books, especially if it's something really good. So, like going back to the what was it? I think it's the Ishmael books. I think most of them had come out when we started reading it. But you said, Shaun, you were literally doing it like week to week or something like that, and
it was horrible because the original ones were released as podcasts, and then then when they stopped doing that and into Audible, it was like, oh, the weight's killing me. What's happening next?
Well, you want to go next on what else you've been reading?
So yeah, I did read the 17th book in the X-Force series, Task Force Hammer, and loved it. No spoilers, but just actually it had been a while since I listened to like R.C. Bray as a narrator too, so it was good getting back into that. Skippy and it was the Joe Skippy dynamic is like so good in this one.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
Back to like almost like the original, like the first few books. So it was really good. And then I just started listening to Dungeon Crawler Carl yesterday. I'm about an hour and a half, 2 hours into it, but just the basic plot of it is so innovative. It's I'm really looking forward to it, just seeing where they're going to go with it. So and I was telling Joseph this, that it was a little bit getting used to the narrator in this, because after listening to Ray Porter and R.C. Bray for like the last couple of weeks, where they're very serious but very familiar narrators, and then having the guy that sounds like Putty from Seinfeld, it's a little jarring. It's good, but it took a little getting used to. So, but
that's funny.
So far the story and the narration, it is good. It just, whoa, this is way different than
Fair enough. I'm excited. I am really excited I'm so excited now, actually, for both of them. I can't wait for the next Skippy book I'm about to start and to start this Dungeon Crawler series. So it'll be a nice change from what I've been listening to. So it's the spooky season. So I usually go back and listen to some horror books, usually by Stephen King. I like a lot of King's writing. But I went ahead and spent some credits on some other books of his. It was funny because I literally downloaded one the day that it came out, and it's actually a re-release of a re-release. It's called Danse Macabre, and he wrote it originally in the early 80s, and then apparently he revised it and has revised it again. The beginning of the book does talk about some more modern horror stuff, but the majority of the book covers horror up until the 80s. And it's funny because when he starts off with movies. And he's very much like, listen, I like what I like. There are some movies on this list that I know are absolute garbage, but I like them. It's okay to like some stuff that other people don't care for. And he talks about them. He talks about, movies with giant ants and giant spiders and, Dracula and stuff like that. And he does a fairly decent job of it. And then he starts talking about TV. He kind of really rags on TV, but I mean, up to this point, I can't, horror on television was not really a thing, at least not done well. And then when he starts talking about books, he's talking about some really older era stuff, and he gets kind of brutal, but I'm just like, even at this point in his life, he's already made a name for himself. So what was funny though, and I was talking about this on the creative show, is I need to go back and see when The Shining was released. I think it's early 80s. I've got to check the times on this because he's pretty positive on the rest of the director's work. And I know he hates Kubrick's interpretation of The Shining. Hates it. But he's very positive on Kubrick stuff up to this point. So it was kind of interesting. I was just like, I need to go back and look history-wise exactly when this fell, because there may be a very clear thing. If he had waited a year or two to write this book, it would have been completely different on that outtake. But I listened to it and enjoyed it. And then one of his older books that I never had listened to, and I was like, let me go back and listen to it because it's a bunch of short stories, is Nightmares and Dreamscapes. And I started listening to it, and there was parts 1, 2, and 3, and I was just like, I don't remember there being a 1, 2, and 3. Well, sure enough, when you get to the final book, I thought it was okay. It's definitely some of his weaker writing, but you get to the end of the final book of the third part, volume 3, and it starts discussing all of the readers, going back to the first one. And I'm just like, I don't think Audible did this. I'm sure they just pulled this directly from whenever they were done on cassettes, probably, or CDs originally, when it was originally released in the 90s. But those motherfuckers split this book into 3 audiobooks. And as a result, I spent 3 credits on it, and I did not care for it. And when I went to return the first one, it let me, but apparently I've hit my limit for the year, so I cannot return the other 2. And I'll just keep checking month to month. And when I'm allowed to start returning more books, I'm probably going to return 2 and 3 as well, because there was a few stories that were okay, but the majority of them, I'm just like, this is not your best stuff. Like, this kind of seems like maybe, once again, it would be interesting to check. This almost sounds like he was scraping some of his older stuff that didn't ever get published. And he says some of the stories had not been published previously. But this kind of seems like, I have to fulfill this contract. What can I come up with? So definitely not his best work. Anyway, well, that is it for the show, ladies and gentlemen. If you would please give us a 5-star rating on wherever it is you listen to the show. I've actually updated the links on all the podcasts so that you can find us pretty much anywhere that you can listen to podcasts. If you want to watch or listen to us, you can subscribe on YouTube as well. And of course, if you go to epicallygeeky.com, you can find this and all the other shows we do, including Epically Geeky, Creatively Geeky, and Sustainably Geeky. We are on the social media as Epically Geeky as well. Where can we find you online, Ray?
The Reluctant Yeti on Instagram.
Chris?
Moody Midlife on Instagram.
Joseph?
J. Marillis on MySpace.
Shaun?
Your favorite broken toy, spelled the Canadian way, on both Instagram and TikTok.
And as always, you can find my individual wacky adventure online at Optimachine on Facebook and Instagram. For everyone on the site, have a good night.